To hell with the date on your birth certificate. Let's talk about what we have in common across generations. Life, sex, and tech at any age. Welcome to Age Blind with Nancy A. Shenker.
Hey, boys and girls, welcome again to Age Blind, where the number on your birth certificate means shit. We look for the things that we have in common across generations as opposed to the things that divide us. And this summer, our theme is hot summer stories of all kinds. We're talking, as usual, about sex, life, and tech across the generations. And people can get married and divorced at any age. And although I don't love talking about divorce, having been through my own, the reality is our listeners and our viewers are intrigued by the topic. And nowadays, about 50% of marriages end in divorce. So it's something that's really, really relevant. Plus, whenever I talk about marriage and divorce, I get to bring out my favorite props, Barbie and Ken. And according to the statistics, one of them is going to be gone. And so just some stats, because I always love statistics, that divorces actually spike in both March and August. So that's interesting. That's a real fact. I checked it a bunch of times. And so this fits in with our hot summer topics because by August, not to be negative, but half of you who are in marriages are likely going to think about divorce, if not go through it. About 2 million people get married every year, and the average age is now 32. A lot of younger people are actually afraid to get married with good reason. And last year, there were about 674,000 divorces, which comes down to 86 divorces per hour. I don't know who tracks this, but that's what the stats say. And our guest today is a 3-time podcaster on Age Blind, Helaine Brick-Cabot, who is not only an incredible matrimonial attorney, but also a close friend of mine. And whenever she comes on as a guest, our views and our listens skyrocket because she has some hot and juicy tales to tell. And in keeping with our theme of the summer, Helaine is going to tell us about some hot and juicy celebrity divorces that have happened over the last year or two, and some of the things she's seen in her own practice that are weird and wild, because when people are splitting up, things tend to get bizarre. So hit it, Helaine. Welcome back. Thrilled to have you as a guest again.
Thank you so much, Nancy. This is my favorite podcast, and you're really wonderful and a great friend. And I love Age Blind.
Thank you.
It's truly what should be, Age Blind. Anyway, what I did was I actually looked up some of the divorces, celebrity divorces, only in 2025. And so this actually only happened over the last 4 months, all of these stories. The celebrities I'm going to discuss are Kanye West, Mamie Gummer, who is Meryl Streep's eldest daughter, Jessica Simpson, who was probably the only one out of all of these who was devastated, and a retrospective Kardashian divorce timeline. And I would like everybody to think, how many are there and who got divorced from whom?
And I just have a quick question for you, Helaine. And even though we're age blind, who is the youngest person in a case that you've ever handled? I'm thinking of the whole Bill Belichick thing going on right now. And who is the oldest person you've ever handled in a divorce?
Okay, let's see. The youngest person I ever handled probably was in their early 20s.
Wow.
That probably is the youngest, and it usually happens in the Jewish Orthodox families because they get married very young. Sometimes it's arranged marriage and they really don't know what they're getting into. So I could have a divorce of someone who was 20 or 21 and they could be married for 2 or 3 years.
Wow.
The oldest person I divorced, I'm trying to think because we talked about this last time, how many gray divorces, which is defined as divorces over 50. I probably divorced somebody who was about 85. It was a second marriage. She was a widow. And he said that the marriage broke up because of his second wife's son, who really didn't want him in the picture. And he was 84 and she was probably 75.
Yeah, I
But
remember when my grandmother she was married to her third husband and they were having issues and they were in their 90s and they talked to my mother and her sister about going into counseling. And I remember my mother saying, counseling, schmounseling, they'll be dead by the time they work out their problems. Can't they just put up with each other a while longer? And in fact, they did live to 98 and 99, fighting all the way to the end.
they
So,
stayed married.
yeah,
They
yeah.
stayed married. Third husband. Wow. That's
The first one died, second one divorced, messy divorce, third one, they were together until death did they part. Papa Leo, may he rest in peace, and Nana Molly. Anyway,
well,
let's jump into, they were not celebrities, so let's
well,
jump into the hot and juicy stuff.
well, the first thing is Kanye West. Kanye West always has something that's truly crazy. So he and Bianca Censori separated after 2 years of marriage, February of 2025. And a source confirmed to the New York Post that Censori had had enough. And
She's the one that used to parade her around half naked at
yes,
events.
and as a matter of fact, they went to the Emmys and she actually was naked. All the photos that you see have her covered up. She was wearing a totally translucent, if you could call it a dress, it was right past her
Hoo-ha.
right, and there was very little on top. And so what she said the last straw is that he started selling swastika t-shirts. This is, as both you and I are Jewish, this is very close to our hearts. And during on the Yeezy website during the 2025 Super Bowl. And she said that was the last straw. She told him that's not who she is and that she can't be associated with that. West says, of course, that he had dominion over her. I don't even know what that means. And he said he's selling those shirts. So obviously he didn't care. It reflects on her. She doesn't want any part of that circus. And he believes that she'll come back to him. And he's saying that she's just mad at him. But right now she's told him that she's completely done. And so they were divorced. They seemingly went south after he attended the 2025 Grammys, and she was dressed completely sheer. That's where she really, and on the red carpet. And days later, he went on another anti-Semitic tirade on X, proclaiming his love for Adolf Hitler and calling himself a Nazi. I mean, it's just really crazy, and she just really had enough. However, you have to hear the terms of the settlement. He gave her a cool $5 million. Let me just get to my notes on this. Right. He gave her a cool $5 million. And I have to tell you that that's a pretty damn good payoff for just a couple of years.
Yeah.
You would agree?
Hey, I might walk naked on a red carpet for 5 million,
Right.
but would not wear a swastika t-shirt. That's where I would draw the line. So
I wanted to talk a little about what these celebrities are saying about why they're getting divorced. Most of them really don't want to parade their dirty laundry in public. And so they're all saying that's irreconcilable differences. And more or less what this, that's no fault. And in New York, it's called irretrievable breakdown of a marriage. And really, it just means that a couple has disagreements and conflicts and they can't resolve it. They can't make it work. They can't live together in a meaningful way. And most people, most of the celebrities I'll talk to you about just state that, except for a couple who, like Bianca Censori, got a little more verbal about it. And this no fault allows celebrities to keep their dirty laundry private, which is really what they want. And it keeps away either one from blaming the other. And in New York, so that people have a general idea, before there was no fault, you had to have fault. You had to say what your partner did wrong. So, of course, it wasn't used often, but adultery was the big one. And I had many, many clients ask me to show that their spouse was committing adultery, which was very difficult. The judges didn't want to have nothing to do with it. The second one was cruel and inhuman treatment. That's probably worse than adultery because in New York, it meant that one spouse had to hit the other. You had to actually show an episode of physical violence. And that also, got very problematic. And the third one was abandonment. And that was another very big one for especially wives, because if the husband left them for someone else, especially, they wanted to make sure that everybody knew that they were abandoned. And then so since New York was the last state in the United States to come up with no fault, these are all gone. And now we're able to have no fault, which in New York is the irretrievable breakdown of a marriage. Okay, so we talked about Kanye, who of course I will talk about again later because his divorce with Kim Kardashian was in the news for years and they had some very interesting issues. So the next one is Mamie Gummer. And Mamie Gummer, of course, is famous for her role in The Good Wife. However, she's also Meryl Streep's eldest daughter. So let's see. She was married for 6 years. And again, they used irreconcilable differences. They have 2 children, Peter 5 and Mary 3. I'd like to talk about that. Meryl Streep's family, every single woman who is born has to be named Mary. The first woman has to be named Mary. Meryl Streep's name is really Mary. They call her Meryl, but her mother's mother was named Mary. Her mother's mother's mother was named Mary. And so, of course, Mamie kept, with the spirit of the family, and she named her daughter Mary. I saw Meryl telling the story about it, that everybody was named Mary, and it's just interesting. Her father decided she wasn't a Mary, that she was a Meryl. But anyway, let's see. They decided to have joint and legal physical custody. So I want to talk about that. What is joint custody? Joint custody means that both sides make most of the major decisions together. That means that they certainly have to get along. Now, the decisions are what school they have to go to, what doctors they see, non-emergent, what extracurricular activities, the religion, etc. And that's the way most people should get divorced if they have children. But as you'll see, Sia didn't want that. So people who don't have joint and physical custody have very serious issues that even go as far as affecting their children. So they have joint physical custody. Mamie also requested spousal maintenance and alimony. So I don't know how much this husband of hers makes, but I guess she doesn't make that much money. And I don't know, is there anything you want to talk about or ask about that, Nancy?
So what about the kids? You mentioned there was a side thing about the kids, Mary and
Well, the kids they're going to have joint legal and physical custody, which means they'll probably see the children 50-50,
uh-huh.
and also that they'll make all the decisions together. So they are being appropriate and they're not letting their differences get in the way of their children.
Yes, and they're obviously doing it well because you're in the business and you knew about it, but I hadn't even heard about the divorce. So whatever they're doing something right because, first of all, it's not Meryl Streep herself, it's her daughter. And even though she's an actress, it's not as mainstream. So, I'm sure some of our listeners and viewers would even go, oh, who the heck is Mamie Gummer? But yeah, I think the media tends to fixate on those celebrities and public figures that are already in the news and that the paparazzi love to follow around. In our last episode, we talked about Bennifer. And then, as you and I both know, the very first episode you were on, we talked about Melania's prenup, and that blew up. In fact, we keep recycling that episode because we know that every time we say the T word, we're going to get a huge influx of people who have opinions on the topic. So you talked about the Kardashians. You haven't really been hearing a lot about them lately, but given that Kanye is back in the news, what are some of the weird and wild things? Because I think what sometimes happens with second and third marriages, which is probably why the divorce rates are higher than first marriages, people don't do their due diligence to really understand why the first marriage didn't work out long term. And that's always a question that I ask on dates. I'll ask a guy, what is the worst thing your ex-wife would probably say about you?
That's a great question, Nancy.
And if they say they don't know, I run for the hills, because if they've already been through the pain and suffering and financial ruin of a divorce, and they still have no clue why their wife wanted out, then, especially if the wife was the one who initiated, then that's not a good sign. It means that the man hasn't done the work. And similarly, if a woman says that the entire falling apart of the marriage was the guy's fault. I mean, I've always said I take 50% of the responsibility for my own marriage not working out. And somebody said to me, why don't you just take 48%? And I said, why? Is there like a prize? Am I going to get a t-shirt or a plaque? Like, yeah, marriage is a 50-50 deal. And then when it dissolves, even though financially it's rarely 50-50, and both parties are usually hurt, pissed off, the kids suffer. But, relationships, whether they're friendships, whether they're marriages, whether they're situationships, at the end of the day, they're all 50-50.
I so agree. They really don't talk about that much, the celebrities, but the people and the celebrities who go through the whole situation in a nice, calm, amenable way are the people who are obviously saying that it's 50-50. Now, you asked about Kanye. Okay, so listen to this. When they filed for divorce in February of 2021, they had a combined net worth of $2.1 billion.
With a B,
That is so
billion.
wild.
Yeah.
Kanye and Kim. Okay, at the time, Kanye had a net worth of $1.3 billion, while Kardashian had a net worth of $780 million. Now, tell me what the Kardashians do that she could have a net worth of $780 million, but she did 4 years ago. Now, both have seen their fortunes dramatically change. Kardashian officially became a billionaire in April of 2021, so that was just a few months after. And her current net worth in 2025 stands at $1.8 billion.
Can I marry her?
West, who's been embroiled in multiple controversies, his net worth, he lost his billionaire status after the whole, apparel issue with Adidas. They cut, they cut the rapper when he started with the business with anti-Semitic comments, and his current net worth stands at $400 million. As of 2024, they still had $70 million in joint assets, which means that they had multiple homes, pieces of art, vehicles, jewelry, and livestock, the status of which is still not determined.
Livestock?
What means if you have $2.1 billion, it's not so easy to untangle. Okay, now the terms. The most alarming term or crazy term is that West agreed to pay $200,000 a month in child support. $200,000 a month. And that doesn't count private school, private security, health. This is just $200,000 a month for shelter, food, vacations, and
Is
things
that per
like
child or that's total?
Total $200,000. They have 4 children. Okay. And the big issue came down to whether or not Kim was going to have joint custody. Because remember, I said that Kanye then would get to have equal input as to the major decisions. And she went back and forth for many months and decided not to have a custody trial, which I believe is the better road to take, because a custody trial, unless it's really, really necessary, hurts the children the most. The lawyers get rich and the children are hurt the most. And so she decided to have joint custody. And in addition to the $200,000, he pays 50-50 of their private school, their college education, and their private security, Nancy, which is very, very important, as we know, because of, the Prince Harry, who was denied his security money from England. Anyway, they will discuss again where the children go to school, non-emergency medical appointments, extracurricular and religious activities, when they put it to their agreement, when the children could get driver's licenses, at what age they can get driver's licenses. That's defined as a major decision, which I also thought was very unusual. I've never put that into an agreement. Neither one of them asked for spousal maintenance, which of course makes sense. And those are really the major terms. And before Kim decided not to go for a custody trial, Kanye became very vocal about having an opinion and input into the children's education and health, et cetera, et cetera. And he actually publicized it on social media. For that, he apologized. And then she said, okay. And he agreed then to not do it publicly. And he actually was very vocal about saying, look, if I didn't do it that way, maybe I would not have gotten joint custody. And so that's the situation. And it seems that they're working things out. You don't hear much in the press, which is really excellent. But I still thought $200,000 a month for child support is
Crazy, crazy. And it is a shame whether, you're talking about a few thousand or 200,000. You really should try to keep the kids from becoming collateral damage whenever possible when splitting up. So not only do you worry about kids when a relationship is ending, but you just told me a outrageous story about a non-human asset that a couple was arguing over. And that asset was
2 cats. So I have a case where the parties separated, and when the wife filed for divorce, which was only in January, they've been separated for 4 years. The wife decided, or the mother decided, that she would not let the son, who was 15 years old, living with the father, she would not let the son see the cats. And the son was devastated. So when we discussed this with the judge said, I am going to have an immediate hearing. And we had like a very mini hearing. He gave us 15 minutes to go out and prepare our clients. We both gave oral argument. The judge asked certain questions, and the judge talked about the names of his cats and how we really have the right judge. And then pendente lite means temporary. He issued a pendente lite order for the custody of these cats. So we're in court. This was 2:00 in the afternoon. The mother had to drop those cats off at her lawyer's office by 4. The judge first said that my client would pick them up at 5, and then he thought it was inhumane to keep the cats in their cage or in their car or crate for more than a half hour. So then he asked my client to show up at 4:30, and it was we were going to have, if the parties couldn't work out some kind of custody or visitation with the child, he promised that we were going to have a trial, which was scheduled for the next Wednesday, and that it would be on the front page of the New York Post. So my adversary, understanding and probably knowing what was best, we settled it. And it worked out that the child now has custody. The child and the father have now custody of the cats for 1 week a month. And it's really complicated, just like children. The custody agreement is just like children, where they drop them off, curbside, how late you can be, what happens, what's the punishment if the party doesn't abide by the rules.
Did they have to get the cat a therapist for all of its?
Not yet, but the mother complained after the father had the cats for about 2 weeks, and she complained about it, and she said that the cats weren't eating correctly when they came back. So she asked for photographs, she asked for vet visits, and she asked for like a laundry list of additional things, which we said, look, we're not doing any of that. It's not in the court order. And if you want to go back to the judge, you'll be turned down. But this was one of the most unusual and interesting cases that, a judge was very interested in because of the child. It's all about the children.
Yep.
Now,
yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Helaine.
No, it's okay. I was going to go on, but you can certainly.
You have another case?
Oh, I have May.
Okay. We'll have to have you back because the show is only 30 minutes. So we're never going to run out. We're never going to run out of material on this topic. I am
right. Well, whenever you want to stop, you let me know. The other people I have are Jessica Simpson and Sia and Steve Guttenberg of the Police Academy fame. But with Jessica Simpson was the only one who was really devastated. She was married 10 years. She said there were trust issues. Probably her husband was either stealing money or screwing around. That's more or less the verbiage for that. And she was devastated. Sia was only married for a year, and they separated after the baby was very, very young. And she got sole custody. So I don't know what's going on with the husband, but she's making all the decisions, and he gets visitation. In New York, that would be like every other weekend and maybe one dinner a week. So, she probably had real issues with her husband. And Guttenberg, they also did it very nicely. It was a second marriage. He was only married for a few years, for 6 years. And they had no children. And they had a prenup. And when you have a prenup, it's so easy because the big financial issues are decided in advance. And so I wanted to say the takeaways, prenups, make it easy to divide up the assets, less attorney's fees, and less grief. No children, of course. The divorce is easier because there's no custody issues. There's no parenting issues. There's no child support. Who pays and how much? The good divorces, celebrity couples are kind to each other. And that's probably the biggest takeaway from this. If they're kind to each other, then everything else just works out.
And I think that's a good statement for all relationships. And what was interesting to me is, reflecting back on my own marriage, which was almost 30 years in duration. What's really, really key along the way is just always maintaining really great communication. And you have to, be accredited to learn how to get your driver's license. There are all these other things in life that you need to get credentialed for. But marriage, it's super easy to just fall in love and marry somebody. And I think people are more aware of it now than ever before, that given the divorce rate is so high, it's really, really, really important to get to know somebody very well before you commit, and also to develop a way of communicating and resolving issues before they grow out of proportion. So I know that's easier said than done. I recently published a book available on Amazon. This is now my shameless plug, called Find Your Love. And the first part is all about honing in on the criteria that are really important to you in a marriage or in a relationship of any kind. And the second part is called Rate Your Dates. And that is basically when you start seeing patterns or red flags or pink flags, as I call them, to really deal with it in the moment as opposed to making excuses. So, sidebar anecdote. I was supposed to go out with a guy this week. He has canceled on me now twice at the 11th hour via text with an excuse that something came up with a friend. And the old Nancy would have just gone out with him anyway. And the current version of me, which is still the same person, just wiser, I called him up and I said, I'm seeing a pattern here, and it's not something that I'm okay with. That, yeah, shit happens, people die, people get sick, unexpected things happen, but twice in a row, oh, I got a call from a friend, and so I'm canceling our plans. That does not bode well. That means that I am not a priority. It means I'm an option. But this is, again, not about me. This is about our listeners and our viewers. You can find Helaine's past episodes on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple, wherever you happen to get your content. And each one has some really, really great, compelling stories about marriage, prenups, divorce, all of the things.
Of
Helaine,
course, and this is not legal advice, if you could end with that.
Oh, for sure. This is not. We put that in the show notes. But
Oh, okay.
although Helaine is a matrimonial attorney, this is not legal advice. This is just a conversation about interesting and fun and quirky things. Not fun, but potentially smirk-worthy things that are going on in the world of matrimonial law. And if you have any questions or topics that Helaine or I did not cover today, or episodes that you'd like to see in the future, or if you'd like to be a guest, just email me at nancyashenker@gmail.com. And again, the podcast is called Age Blind, and you can listen or view it wherever you get your podcast content. Anything else you would like to add, Helaine? If people do want to get a hold of you, if they're contemplating divorce, if they're trying to get a prenup done and they live in New York, what's the best way to reach you?
I guess they could reach me at Helaine@brickhabitlaw.com. I don't know. You could put that up. It's a little, it's a little complicated to spell out, but that would be the best way to contact me by email. And I want to say, Nancy, this is so much fun. You're so full of life and enthusiasm. The topics are really great. And it's just such a pleasure talking to you and being a friend and participating in these podcasts.
Well, thank you. I will definitely have you on again. And we'll close. For those of you who are watching on YouTube,
I love it.
and this time it's going to be Barbie who runs away. And then maybe Ken will start dating a 20-year-old and get married and get divorced again. We don't know. So thank you, Helaine. Remember, be age blind. Peace out.
Yes.